Hello, everyone. This is Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired show, and my guest today is Peter Russell. Peter Russell is a leading thinker on consciousness and contemporary spirituality. He coined the term global brain in his 1980s bestseller of the same name, in which he predicted the internet and the impact it will have on humanity. He's the author of 12 other books, including Waking Up in Time, From Science to God, and his most recent Let It Go of Nothing, Relax Your Mind and Discover the Wonder of Your True Nature. He studied theoretical physics, experimental psychology, and computer science at the University of Cambridge, and meditation and Eastern philosophy in India. And in the 80s, pioneered the introduction of personal growth programs to corporations. His mission is to distill the essential wisdom on human consciousness found in the world's various spiritual traditions and to disseminate their teachings on self-liberation in contemporary and compelling ways. Peter, thank you very much for joining me today.
Lovely to be with you.
It's an honor to have you. You touch on so many subjects over your life, and you touch so many lives of people through your books. And the latest one has a very telling title. And you mentioned that our body is like a book which we have to learn how to read. The body gathers anxiety, stress, and blocked energies. And I can provide a personal example. I mean, I had my right arm at one point not being able to use it because we move places, we change energies, and I tried everything. And only after we spent about 4 months on the beach in a relaxed environment, those energies, bad energies or negative energies, just diminished, and I was able to recover the movement in my right hand. So, how do you explain that in your book?
I think two things. One, I mean, what's really important is the relaxation. That's absolutely critical because in our society, I think we all most of us end up in a state of background tension. And that tension not only actually makes whatever's going on in the body worse, tension does not help the body. The body likes to be relaxed. But the tension also blocks our awareness from really noticing what is going on. So the first key thing is to learn to relax, just to let the body relax as you did on the beach. That's absolutely crucial for me. And then the second thing is to notice what is going on in the body. I mean, with anything, like with your example, I don't know how it was for you, but what often happens is people go to their head. They start thinking, what is this? What caused this? What's the background? What do I need to resolve this? We get into thinking because we're so good at thinking. We're so good at thinking. That's where we tend to go, is like, okay, let me sort this out. I'm a clever person. I can work out what it is. What doctor do I need to see? Whatever it is. What I suggest to people is actually stop thinking about it, but go into the body and actually notice what is going on. And there's usually quite a lot going on around any emotion, physical thing. Oh, there's a slight tension here, or this feels, or there's a numbness here, or there's a slight sensation in my stomach. But be curious about the body, because the body has so much wisdom in there. Like the body knows what's going on, but we sort of ignore what the body wants to tell us. So that's why I say, go to the body, be curious, listen to it, see what it has to show you, but don't try to change it. It's like an exploration. This is happening. That's happening. And I mean, I had an instance slightly similar to yours, but not as bad. I used to be, when I sat to meditate, I get a pain right there in my left shoulder. And sometimes I knew it was posture, something wrong with the way I was sitting, and I'd move and try, but it would keep on coming back. And so, what I learned was just to not try to change it, but to tune into it. It's like, so it's a bit there and a bit there, and just to be with it. And just being with it it was amazing. Something in my lower back relaxed. And it's like the tension was coming from something in my lower back pulling. I could never work that out with my head that it was my lower back, but my body knew. And when the lower back relaxed, oh, the shoulder relaxed. It's like, so yeah, go to the body, listen to the body. There's so much wisdom there. Yeah.
So in other words, we have to kind of slow down and as you said, listen to the body, have those periods of relaxation. And another example for me was many years ago when I had to do a job I really didn't like. And the moment I was waking up in the morning at 5:30 to leave, I had a pain on my left shoulder, like someone was stabbing me repeatedly. It was a very thin but deep pain, which won't go away until I will be back home 12 hours later. So it was very, very telling. And I think at that time, I learned to listen to my body.
Yes, yes, yes. It's so important. And particularly when it's something like that where you know it's associated with some resistance, some anxiety or something. Yeah. The body has so much to tell us. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
along the same lines of letting go, with so many things happening these days in the world, more facts are being revealed, coming to the surface as what we thought was true is fake and is not real. But some of us still cling to the fact that those ideas might be true, even if, again, the reality
Right.
tells us it's the opposite. Why do you think we are so stubborn to do that and cling pretty much to the past?
I think there's probably several reasons. One, we possibly get a sense of identity from clinging to some idea or belief. It's like, oh, this is me, this is what I think, this is what I believe, this is what I know. So some of it can be that, just our own personal attachment to a fact or an idea. Um, Behind that is often a sense of this this idea is actually going to make me happy in some way or other, even if just like I feel right. Like all deep down, we all want to feel okay, and that sense of I'm right, I feel right is actually we cling to it because we don't want to be wrong, and to actually let go of an idea that we've held so strongly. Inside, it means I've got to accept I was wrong. And, it doesn't mean we're wrong. It just means things have changed and I need to change. And I think that's the most important thing, is to learn how to be flexible in our thinking, to let go of old ideas when they don't work. And so, I mean, one thing I suggest to people is when they find themselves holding on to an idea, something that's from the past, is to basically ask two questions. I give people two questions. The first is, how does that idea, that belief, whatever it is, how does it serve you? How does it help you? Because it's there for a reason. It's definitely there for a reason, to say, okay, it may have served me in the past, but to actually look within and actually ask yourself, as a sort of investigation, how does this idea help me? How does it serve me in my life? So that you're not trying to reject it, but you're saying, yes, it has value. It's been there, it has value. And then to say, and how does it limit me? How does this idea hold me back? And that way you can begin to loosen your attachment to it. You can begin to loosen your connection. So first of all, accepting it. Yes, this idea has been valuable. How does it help me? But then how does it limit me? And it may be limiting you because one of the ways it generally limits us, it stops us seeing new things because we see things through the old lens. So one of the ways it limits us is stopping us seeing things from a different perspective. But it may also limit us in terms of how we relate to people or how it creates tension in the body. It can be many, many different things. But when we see the cost, if you like, when we see the cost of holding on to a certain idea, then it becomes easier to let go. We have the freedom then to begin to let go. And it's basically, I mean, throughout, the new book on letting go, one of the things I continually suggest to people is, what you want to let go of, first let it in. Don't try to get rid of it. Allow it in. And so in this way, we're allowing in the idea, we're allowing in its value, and we're allowing in the cost of holding on. But the more we can become familiar with it, the easier it becomes to release it. What we tend to do is push things to the back of our mind. But what I suggest is do the opposite. Bring it into your consciousness.
Yeah. And do you think that a remedy to letting go faster is an increased level of consciousness and awareness?
Yes. It's bringing awareness to what it is, what is going on, bringing awareness to what it is you want to let go of, bringing an awareness to, first of all, to how it feels to be holding on. This is the important thing, how it feels to be holding on. If we notice how it feels to be holding on, if we bring that into our consciousness, then it becomes easier. But what we tend to do is do the opposite. If we've got an uncomfortable emotion, say, if it's uncomfortable, we don't like it, we don't want it. So what we tend to do is ignore it. We push it to the back of our mind where we think it's not going to bother us. We don't think about it. But I mean, as Carl Jung said, what you resist persists. What you push to the back, it's still there. It's still controlling you, even if you're not thinking about it. So I suggest, doing the opposite, bringing it into your consciousness, becoming aware of it. So, yeah, but basically raising your awareness around whatever it is you're wanting to release.
Yes. One chapter of your book, which I was quite interested in, was the one about the ego. You state that there is no such as ego, and this is more or less a contentious point of view. So I would like you to expand on it if possible.
Right. Yes. I mean, a lot of the title of the book and other titles in the book are deliberately provocative. Deliberately. So what I say is there is no such thing as ego. And I don't mean we don't get caught in egoic thinking and we don't get egocentric behaviors, but I'm saying the ego is not a thing. That's what I'm saying. The ego is not a thing. If I look inside myself, I don't find some separate thing called ego. I don't find a part of me or some entity or something. I don't find another self that I call ego. So I don't find a thing I can call ego. What I find is, I find, egocentric thoughts, egocentric values, basically egocentric ways of being, egocentric ways of thinking. And they are what I call modes of thought that we get caught in. And in a sense, the ego is a mindset, is what psychologists call a mindset. It's a way we see things that condition how we decide, how we respond. And it's a mindset that says, hey, I've got to look after myself. I've got to do this, often at the expense of other people. So it's a very self-centered mindset. The important point about this is, if you see ego as a thing, then you get caught in what a lot of spiritual teachings talk about. Oh, I've got to get rid of my ego. I've got to conquer my ego. I've got to leave it behind. I've got to transcend my ego. All of that is thinking of the ego as a thing. And that could, what spiritual teachings say, oh, that can take, many, many, many years to conquer your ego. If you see ego as a mode of thinking that you get caught in from time to time, then you can take a very different approach. It's saying, okay, I'm caught in an egoic mode of thinking. Let me pause that. Let me step out of that way of thinking. And you can do that just by saying, okay, coming back to being here in the present moment. So letting go of ego becomes something that we can do at any time we notice we're caught in it. So it becomes an ongoing practice rather than some far off goal. So we're practicing stepping out of that egoic mode of thinking. And that to me is a much more productive way of looking at it than seeing it as some enemy that we have to defeat.
Yes, it's a very interesting point of view. And from my perspective, from my own experience, I can say that I felt a divider between the ego point of view and the soul point of view.
Yes.
It was like as I said, as a divider was pulled between the soul and,
Yeah.
let's say, ego, and it was much more quieter on the other side, on the
Right.
soul side,
Right.
which with no thinking,
Right.
with just being.
Right.
But
Yeah.
while on the ego side, is the side of you which are being portrayed to the world, and that has
Yes.
to be active pretty much all the time.
Right. It takes a lot of energy, but also the ego side it wants to be right. Its job is to be right. It's insistent because underneath it, what the ego side, the ego mode is doing, it's trying to keep you safe. It's connected ultimately to keeping the organism alive, keeping it safe, helping you survive, and that's a really important job. Its job is so in that sense, it's an ally. It's not an enemy. It's an ally which is trying to help you. It's trying to help you survive. Unfortunately, most of the time it's not necessary. And so, one of the things I say is, thank you for helping, but right now you're not really helping. Thank you for trying. So, but because it's got a job to do, it can be very insistent. So it's like, you must do this. Oh, I must make this phone call. I must say this to this person. I must do this. It's really important. And that for me is one way of recognizing when I am caught in that ego mode of thinking, is if this voice is saying, this is really important, you must do this. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about alternatives. This is the way you must act. Its job is to be right. It doesn't like to be questioned. And so that's why, what you say is when we step out of it and come back to what you call the soul side, we're not feeding the ego anymore. We're just saying, okay, thank you, but not now.
Yes, and in fact, I had a discussion the other day with a very close friend of mine, and he reiterated the fact that I should keep telling my ego how much I love him. I love it.
Yeah.
The same with the body. And
Yes.
that will smooth out the relationship
Very
between
good.
us.
Yes. Very good. Yes. It's there to help us and to love it and say, I love you and thank you. But, right now you're not really helping either of us. Because also what the ego mind does, it creates tension. It's nearly always creating tension in some way or another. So I've got to do this. This is right, or this is what I must work out how to do. So there's nearly always a background sense of tension with it. So that's another way of recognizing when you're caught in that mode of thinking. Is like, is there a background sense of tension in me, in my mind, in my being, just very faint? If so, that could mean you're caught in that ego mode. When you're in what you call the soul mode, it's generally a much more relaxed, easy, accepting way of being.
Yes. Another chapter of your book is titled Praying for Self. Why is that important?
Yes, praying to the self. We normally think of prayer as, asking some other being, entity, divine essence, or the universe or the cosmos to help us in some way, or to help somebody else, or to help the world. It's like we're asking for some, call it divine intervention in the world, whether it's like my own health, someone else's, whether it's what's happening in another country. But it's like saying, I can't do this alone, so please help me. I can't do this alone. That's the sort of conventional idea of prayer. What I realize is when I'm asking for help in myself with something, whatever it is, praying for a better quality of life or whatever it is, the reason I'm not satisfied where I am is I'm caught up in a particular way of thinking about things. What we were talking about before with beliefs, I'm caught up in an attachment to an idea. So I find the intervention I need is not out in the world. The intervention is in my mind. So I'm praying for an inner intervention in my mind. And so what I see is if I'm caught up in a particular way of seeing things, then what I ask for is there possibly another way of looking at this? And just as a very open question, I don't try and find another way because that just gets the ego involved again. But just to be quiet, to open up and say, could there possibly be another way of seeing this? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. And often what happens is another way of seeing comes, another way of seeing appears. One example, in fact, it's the example I start the book off with, is when I was first exploring this several years ago, my partner at the time, we were having one of those little difficult periods for a couple of days, like happens in any relationship. It wasn't serious, but like we weren't seeing things the same way, with little conflict, a little tension. And I just decided to ask, this question: could there possibly be another way of seeing this? And it was amazing. Almost instantly, I saw things in a completely different way. It's like, here is another human being on her own path, dealing with her own life, dealing with me, with all my stuff. And almost instantly, love returned. I felt at ease again, love returned, and there's a sense of obviousness. Why hadn't I seen this before? It was so obvious. The reason I hadn't seen it before was I was so stuck in my way of seeing, which was why she was wrong and why she had to change, all of that. That was what I was stuck in. And so just asking, in a way, praying to myself to show me another way of being, another way of seeing things. So that's what I'm praying to. I'm praying to myself, could you show me, please, possibly another way of looking at this situation? And when I do, it's nearly always something that feels a lot easier. There's a lot more compassion or love in it. And also this thing of truth. It's like there's an obviousness to it that's always there. So that's why I call it praying to myself. And it's, yes, it's not praying to some other being. It's praying to asking my own being for help, asking my own being for help. And the help I want is, can I see things in a different way? That's the help I need.
Yes, indeed. And these days I created the habit of praying to myself to find love within for all these human beings who are creating havoc all over the world.
Yeah.
And in the last 2-3 years as well. So I'm trying to go deeper within and eliminate any type of judgment and just
Right.
let love hit them, so
Right.
they will understand their own mistakes and they will also start feeding the white wolf, not the black wolf.
Yeah.
So we'll see how those events will unfold, because I know there are a lot of people like myself sending them love,
Right.
and asking them to stop what's going on these
Right.
days.
And there again, in exploring that, I think that question can be really useful when you're looking at, some other group of people or an individual, whatever. It's just keep bringing back that. Is there another way of seeing this? Is there another way of seeing what's going on? I find it can be helpful in almost any situation where you're feeling some sort of trouble, discomfort, and that it allows the love to come forth. Because I think deep down we are all loving beings, deep down, but that loving, I call it lovingness. That lovingness gets blocked by all our thinking and our wanting and our trying to change things. All of that is blocking that quality of lovingness that's, I think, in all of us.
Yes. Thank you. So we'll change gear, but not before recommending everyone to go and buy the book, Letting Go of Nothing. Very interesting read. So I know you are very fond of predictions, and we mentioned about the book you wrote in the 80s, the internet, the global brain. So do you think people are more willing to experience the virtual reality and live in virtual reality than going in nature and experience the real world?
Sadly, yes. I think sadly, virtual reality is so tantalizing, and all all the corporations, the businesses, the people who are developing virtual reality, they want to make it attractive because they want to sell it. It's a market. We don't need virtual reality. We may need virtual reality in certain situations, like, in a medical situation where a doctor is doing an operation. It can be very useful to have a virtual reality picture of what's actually happening inside the body. I mean, that sort of thing can be very useful. And so there's other instances. But for entertainment, we don't need it for entertainment, but we make it, but businesses need it for entertainment. It's the next thing because, radio got boring, television got boring, the internet got boring, virtual reality, now that'll get boring. But, we sell it, we make it so interesting that people are attracted to it and they can have fun in it and do all these things they can't do in the real reality. I don't think it's that useful, really. I think, as you say, much better to be in this reality. First of all, this reality has a much better definition. I can look at a tree, I can go look at a leaf in fine detail, I can hear the sounds in perfect fidelity. In virtual reality, it's pixelated, it's all, it doesn't even look quite like reality yet. But, this reality is wonderful, it's beautiful, it's living, it's a living reality. Virtual reality is not a living reality, it's a digital dead reality. This reality is alive. There is so much to explore. And I think, so much comfort can come from just being here in this world. This is the world we're born into. And to just be in it, to love it, to savor it, to see its beauty, whatever it is. There's beauty in everything. Even the things we think aren't beautiful, we can find beauty in them. So, yes, I personally am not interested in virtual reality at all, although I think I can say I was the person who developed the first ever virtual reality system. Back in 1970, I was doing a postgraduate degree in computer science, and that was when I got the idea of the global brain, because I saw that the way computers were going was not just bigger computers, but the networking of computers. And I was actually working on joining two computers in the computer lab at Cambridge, a small PDP-7 and a huge thing we called Titan, which was the biggest computer in England, getting them to talk, networking. And my project was to take the visual. This computer had a screen. Like in those days, to have a screen on a computer was like brand new. And I wanted to look at creating 3D images on the screen. And so I developed a system where I produced images for the left eye, images for the right eye, and developed a mirror system, not goggles, but a mirror system, so you could look at the screen and you could see things in 3D. And I don't think anybody had done that at that stage. Firstly, because this was one of the first computers we had that had a screen on it. And so it was really like the first opportunity to do it. And so I like to think I created the first virtual reality system, a very simple one, but I created the first virtual reality system. But that was it. I came across my thesis the other day and read it like, oh, this is fascinating what I did then. But I've had no interest in it since then. It was more of a challenge of how to do it that I was interested in rather than the effects of it.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I write science fiction and I wrote about crystal implants into the cornea and the connection with the pineal gland. And then a network of crystal clouds, which will connect everyone's mind to interact directly without the interference of the government or any other interference. So I created that idea from a positive perspective, because now people can communicate telepathically, can communicate on the cloud. There were benefits based on my writing, and I think we already know the end result of being permanent in the metaverse. The movie Surrogates with Bruce Willis, which was launched like several years ago, it shows people which are controlled in the metaverse. They are stuck to their chairs, they are fat, their muscles will be dystrophic. I mean,
Yeah.
there are all kinds of consequences from health to human interaction. So there is
Yeah.
no secret where we are heading if we keep embracing the metaverse completely.
Right. Yes. I think it's sad, and it's all about money. It's just Facebook is running out of its energy. The advertisers aren't so keen on it, so you've got to create a new product which is more attracting, which will get more advertisers, which will keep Facebook and Zuckerberg happy for another 10 years.
Yes, and I read your comments on Ray Kurzweil predictions about 2025, that the emergence of mass market human implants. And I think they are pushing very hard to turn us into transhumans.
Yes.
Do you think we can stop that process?
Do I think we can what?
Stop that process?
No, we can't stop it. You and I are powerless to stop it. It's the momentum, the machinery of technology and business and wanting to make more money. We can't stop it. It will happen. It's bound to happen. What we can do is to choose, obviously not to do it, but to educate people. We can educate people why we think it's not a good idea, how it could harm them. So I think we can educate people. The same with virtual reality. It's going to happen, but we can educate people as to its dangers, and show them that we don't need it. We really don't need it. Life is wonderful anyhow. We don't need all these other gadgets. The transhuman thing is like, the ordinary human thing is pretty good. It's pretty good, really. We just have to, learn to appreciate and love just being this human being without all this other stuff.
And it could be just part of a cycle where we go back to a nomadic lifestyle. And there are people who predicted this type of events 4,000 to 5,000 years in the future.
Yes, yes. I mean, who knows where the future's going to go? I mean, it's like, I think things are changing so fast. Almost anything can happen. Almost anything can happen. I think we're going to be surprised. Whatever happens, I think it's going to be a big surprise for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, throughout our life, we want things, tangible things, material things. And some of us can manifest such things. And the more I read about quantum manifestation, the more I believe in this type of producing or manifesting material things. What's your opinion about this approach?
Well, first of all, we have to ask why we want material things. I think that's a deeper question. And I think, behind most of the material things we want or try to get in the normal way, by buying them with money or getting gifts or from friends or making them, is the idea that this will make me happier. We're conditioned in our society into the belief that if I had this or did this or could change the world in some way, I would be happier. This is the basic belief system that runs our society, it runs our world, and deep down it runs us. So the first question I would ask is, why do you want to manifest these things? Ultimately you think, oh, if I manifested a better relationship, I would be happier. If I manifested a new job in a different country, I would be happier. It all falls into this belief that what we have makes us happy. I think the opposite is actually true. We make ourselves unhappy by not having something, and that's something we do. And then when we get it, we feel happy because we stopped creating that particular discontent. So that's the first question I would ask. How it happens, I don't know. I mean, I know from my experience that when I put my intention on something and put my feelings into it, when I imagine how something could be and how I would feel if it happens, and hold that in meditation, then often something seems to happen. Um, it's almost like synchronicity seems to happen. It's like coincidences happen whereby I not necessarily get what I wanted, but something moves me in that direction. And I find that fascinating. Just we can't. I don't. We can understand synchronicity, but somehow, having our intention, somehow, I don't know how, allows situations to come to my consciousness which are helpful. That's probably the best I can say.
Yeah, so maybe the cosmic consciousness checks our motives, our reasons, and if they are sincere and come from the heart and serve a higher purpose, that consciousness will allow the synchronicity to happen.
Yes, it could be something like that. As I say, I'm cautious about putting any explanation, but it could well be something like that. Yes, yes.
Yeah, because there are so many shamans and spiritual people who have amazing powers, and they say we don't ask questions about how can we do it. We know that we can do it, and for us it's enough. Because we are afraid that we might lose the powers if we start asking questions.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And going back for a second to the transhuman idea, I just found a note about Yuval Noah Harari, who recently said that humans are hackable animals. Have you heard that comment?
No, I haven't. But I could understand that. Yeah. Depends what you mean by hack. Do you mean a technological hack, or I think we're also hackable in our mind. We can change our mind. We can change our thinking. We can change our programming. So we're hackable in that way, as well as putting implants in as well.
Implants and DNA hacking.
Yes.
In order to reach, again, kind of quoting him, with using digital IDs to expand control far beyond where the KGB and Stasi could in the last century.
Right.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, pretty disturbing comment.
Or what China is doing these days. I mean, I think the control China is exercising over its people through technology is worrying, very worrying. Yeah.
Yes, and they are going to implement. I mean, I read documents on the Canadian website, Canadian government website, mentioning that they want to implement that. So pretty much looks like they are going after developed countries first.
Maybe, yes. They want complete control of their people, yes. As you say, as did the Stasi and other people. It's like having control of the people is what the leader needs to stay in power and keep things going the way they want.
Yeah, that's sad. During my research, I heard you mentioning A Course in Miracles, and I would like to know how did impact you, and you still think it has a spiritual impact these days?
Yes, it was a very important part of my own journey, my own awakening. In a way, I regard it as a teacher. It's not wasn't a person teaching, but I think it's a very important teaching. I came across it very, very early on when it was first published, and I didn't really get it at that stage. But then a few years later, a friend was avidly reading it and underlining bits, and I started looking at it and thought, oh, this is interesting, and realizing it's really saying what all the great spiritual teachings have said. It's saying it in a very different language. It's a somewhat Christian language, which puts some people off. And also it's in the male gender, a lot of it, which puts other people off. But it's really at the essence of what it is saying is that we need to let go of it calls the thought system of the ego, which is what I was talking about earlier, the mindset of the ego, the thought. We need to let go of the thought system of the ego. The thought system of the ego is, if I have this, I'll be happy. This is what I need. We need to let go of the thought system of the ego and tune into, in its language, the thought system of God, but I would say in my language, that's tuning into what you call the soul, tuning into my own soul's wisdom, tuning into my own soul's knowledge. So in that sense, I find it, that's the simplest way of putting it. It's the essence of what so many teachings are talking about. And it says its goal is to basically release, bring love into the world. But it says, it is not about how do we create love, but how do we remove the veils to its presence. And the veils to love's presence are what we were talking about earlier, the thought systems we get caught in, the thinking, the doing, all of that hides our innate lovingness. So that I found, really attractive. And then it contains basically a lot of different exercises to help you do that, to help you, let go of certain ways of seeing things, to trust your own way of seeing things, to trust what you call your soul being. So that to me is its essence. It gets quite wordy at times, but I still look at it. I mean, I came across it 35 years ago, 40 years ago when it was first published, and read it a lot over the following 5-10 years, and it had a deep impact. But I still go back and look at it. Every night I open it. I did the other day, just opened it and like, oh wow, this is really important. So for me, there's a huge amount of wisdom there, but it's that same wisdom that comes up in every teaching, but put in a different way.
Yes, I have 75 lessons left before I complete it my first time, because each of us has a particular time in life when to find this type of material. So
Yes. Good.
I know you studied with the Maharishi. Do you have any fond memory of him that you can share with us here?
Yes. I think the fondest time I spent several months with him in India, in Rishikesh, living with him in his ashram. And I think the fondest times were late at night. Some of us would gather in his room late at night and just question him, ask questions. In the Briharandaka Upanishad, it says this: how does this relate to what you're saying about unity consciousness? Or, we could get into asking him deep questions about meditation, about Indian teachings on a personal level. And that's one thing I really feel, I feel that very, very fondly. He was a wonderful teacher, Probably, I'd probably say 50% of what I have to share today, I can trace back to my times with him.
That's powerful. Thank you. Have you asked him any questions about Bhagavad Gita? I know that book changed my life for sure.
Yes, the Bhagavad Gita was central to his teaching, and in fact, he produced a whole new translation and commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and that was one of his great gifts, one of his great books. I'm sure I did ask him questions about it. I can't remember exactly what they were now. It's a long time ago, 50 years ago. But I know, yes, the Bhagavad Gita was a very important book for him. And what's important for him was to bring out the underlying teaching, what it was really about. Because it's so easy, I think, for us Westerners to get caught up on the Indian words, what does it mean, the be without the three gunas. It's like, how do we understand that? What does that mean? And so he was actually translating it and writing about it to bring out its deeper meaning beyond the story. What was it that Krishna was really teaching Arjuna? So he wanted to bring out that teaching. So it was a fundamental book for him, and he used it a lot in his teaching.
Yeah, I read the commentary done by Paramahansa Yogananda, and again, for me, it was an eye-opener.
Yes, yeah.
because just reading the book without any commentary, I don't think anyone will go too far in
Right,
understanding the underlying meaning of
right,
the
yeah.
verses.
And you need commentaries. And it's not just for us Westerners, it's a whole tradition in Indian culture for teachers to write commentaries in, in Hindi or whatever for their own people. Because a lot of these teachings, when you go back, they started as oral teachings. They were passed down by word of mouth. And in order to keep the truth in that teaching, they were reduced to what are called sutras, which are like a sutra means a thread. So Upanishads, like there's lots of different sutras, lots of different very short sentences of like 3, 4, 5 words, which contain a whole lot of wisdom, and it has to be unpacked in order to understand what it means. And so, this is most teachers in India do this. They write commentaries on these teachings to actually show people who speak that language or who know Sanskrit, to actually show them what it means underneath, because they were deliberately kept, as I say, very compact in order that you could learn the words and pass them down, but then you needed a teacher to unpack and show you what the words were really pointing to.
Yes, indeed. Peter, now that a lot of restrictions are being lifted all over the world, are you planning of attending or organizing any retreats?
Not yet, not yet. I will do. I've been actually going online more, and I sort of run occasional, I would call them satsangs online. I'm probably doing one in a couple of weeks. They're just occasional. When I feel I have something I want to share and teach, I do that. Um, I have a sangha here in Northern California, which stopped because of COVID, but that will probably start again. And and I will see. I mean, if I get invited to go and run a retreat or go and teach somewhere, I shall probably do it. Yes.
And at this point, do you run any other online programs?
Not well. I have a regular online meditation course, which is recording. So I don't run it live, but that's been going for several years. It's called How to Meditate Without Even Trying, because so many people put effort into meditation and then wonder why it doesn't work. And to me, meditation should be effortless and enjoyable. And so I have this course of just a series of lessons which people can sign up for, and people really seem to like it. I get so many good comments of how it's helped them really get into meditation, particularly people who've tried and perhaps tried too hard to get into meditation.
Yes,
So I
sometimes we
I
try
have
too
that.
hard,
Yeah. Yes.
indeed. Peter, we are approaching the end of the interview. Any
Wow.
final
Already.
thoughts?
Wow. I think, yes, one final thought, which I think we haven't touched upon, I mentioned it briefly in the book, is what I call kindness. Kindness. And I think this is a really important principle. I mean, the Dalai Lama was once asked, "What is your religion?" And he said, "My religion is kindness." And it comes from the fact that we all want the same thing. We all want to be happy, at peace, contented. We want to feel respected. We want to be loved. None of us want to be attacked or rejected. So the principle of kindness is in whatever you're doing, talking to somebody else, communicating, however you're behaving with somebody else, to have in the back of your mind, how can I say this or do this so that the other person feels loved rather than attacked? And so it's then noticing when there's a slight attack thought coming in, like you just want to say something just to actually get your own back or something. When you notice that coming in, to say, no, let's be kind. How can I be kind to anyone I interact with? I think if we all practice that, being kind to each other, it's another form of love. That how can we care for another person's inner world, for the inner well-being? So I would just encourage us all to just practice kindness as much as we can. It makes a huge difference.
Thank you very much for these words of wisdom and for a lovely discussion. I'm very honored, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, like it. Visit my website to get a free copy of my book. Support me on patreon.com/Claudiu Murgan. And until next time, love and gratitude.